Hello, 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 hello. It is Thursday. Wow, that was quick. I love watching the lives. You're awesome. Wow, thanks so much, Juan. I appreciate it. You just jumped right in there, didn't you? It is Thursday, May 13th, 7:01 p.m. on the East Coast. This is a special, well, it's an episode of Just Ethan on a Thursday night. I don't know that it's a special episode of Just Ethan on a Thursday night. So if you're joining us, please say hello. Let us know where you're from. Juan started it off great. So let's continue the energy. And we have some good stuff to discuss today. So bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your chats, and we're going to have some, I think, a good hour of conversation. And if you're just joining us, as always, please say hello. There he is. Hey, Eric. Eric, I'm coming to Houston at the end of June to visit family. A, let me know if there's trivia in your area, and B, if you want somebody on your team, and if it's a good prize. So we'll talk. Deirdre, torn between two lovers. Hello, darling. How are you? It's good to see you. Yeah, if you're just joining us, please say hello. Let us know where you're from. I know where Deirdre and Eric are from. Juan, where are you from? We have about 30 seconds before we get rolling. Fun to get rolling. I like to roll and rock. Hi, Margaret from NZ. I was like, Nevada, that's neat. It's New Zealand, I know, but my brain went Nevada. It seems like a nice place, Nevada. Well, thank you. It's tomorrow, yeah. There's Nikki Bradley in Ireland. We've got some great people here. So anyway, it is 7:03 p.m., just after 2 minutes. Oh, hey, from Houston, can you talk about the backdoor spike? For sure. I'd be happy to talk about the backdoor spike. Great question. Cordula, Germany. I don't know that we've had anybody from Germany. Oh, your name is Cordula from Germany. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. So glad you're here. So yeah, let's get rolling. And Juan, you know where I'm from. Hi, Jessica, newborn mommy. Hope your kid's doing great. All right, let's get rolling. So have some good stuff to talk about today. As you know, my name is Ethan. I'm the national advocate for the International OCD Foundation. Let's get through some quick housekeeping, and then we'll jump into some topics. So this town hall, this is not a town hall. This Just Ethan is intended to serve as educational content and is not intended to replace therapy, because I'm not a therapist. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact the local clinician. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. It should not be used if you are in distress or feel unsafe. If you're in a crisis or ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room, call 911, or call the suicide prevention hotline at 800-273-8255. Wow, we have a couple people from Ireland. Awesome. Hey, Dave, do you need a haircut? I probably do need a haircut. I think she left it long last time because I just got one like 3 weeks ago, but it's looking a little, although I just recorded a video with this, so I don't know, Dave. Now I'm feeling slightly self-conscious. Hi, Elba in Ireland. So Nikki is in Ireland as well. So we have the luck of the Irish with us for sure, with a hint of New Zealand and some Germany. I'm feeling this. I like it. Good afternoon from Oregon. Hey, Snow White, you're very welcome for this. As always, we want to be respectful and kind of others. This is a public forum, but we like to create as safe a space as possible. Just keep that in mind as you're asking questions or comments or things like that. Please be aware that it'll be on Facebook and YouTube after the fact. But as always, we like to be as safe and support one another as we possibly can be. I support you, you support me, and we support each other. With that, it's time to have some conversation. Hi, Austin. I love Austin. Have some conversation, get into some questions and all kinds of good stuff. So with that, it's Valerie Andrews, another lead advocate who's got her Faith and Mental Health Conference coming up just around the corner. I'll be talking more about that at the end of the live stream. So thank you for your questions. Hold tight on those. I want to talk a little bit about um, some recent experiences I had with OCD popping up. And kind of the topic of tonight is what happens when OCD shows up when you least expect it. And so I thought we'd dive into that for a little while, and then we'll definitely get to questions. So I'm going to pose I'm going to pose the question to you all for a minute. What happens when OCD shows up when you least expect it? You're going about your day. And I know for some people it's there all the time, like it was for me when I was really sick. I don't know that I had a break from it, but you're going about your day. You're living. You don't feel like you're going to be triggered. There's nothing going on. What happens when OCD shows up when you least expect it? Give me some examples of what you guys go through. Focus changes to the monster. That is very true, Deirdre. Very, very true. Just looking up something. Focus on the monster. I tend to panic and retreat. Sure. Not now, Satan. I like that. Not now, Satan. Urge to compulse. What else, guys? Come on. What happens when OCD shows up when you least expect it? We kind of call those in vivo in life. You're not doing a live exposure. When I was teaching Sunday school, how did you handle that, Valerie? So you're teaching Sunday school. You're kind of on the spot. Kids are watching you. Eric wrote, I've been doing well with exposures in my own life, but I've lately found myself triggered by things I see on TV. And I imagine, Eric, that's kind of similar to what I'm talking about is you're sitting down to relax and you're done with your ERP and you're watching TV and suddenly there's something that kind of hits you out of left field. Jessica wrote, when OCD shows up when I least expect it, I have to immediately tell myself, no, it's OCD, it's not me, or is it? Then I'll try to use grounding skills like the 5 senses, which we can definitely talk about. So the reason I bring this up is because OCD showing up unexpectedly is a really, really bizarre experience. And maybe you guys can relate. So for me, when I'm not experiencing OCD or I'm not having thoughts, it feels like OCD is a million miles away. It really does. Like, hey, there's Neil. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Dave thinks I need a haircut, but good to see Neil on. One of the best advocates around and amazingly impassionate guy. If you don't know Neil, you need to know Neil. My mind freezes and someone can speak to me and I'm stuck in my head. Absolutely, Mike. I totally relate to that. I think it's just a weird thing because, like I said, OCD feels so far away. I always make the analogy that it's like running a marathon. You know, at the end of the marathon, you're 26 miles away, in theory, from the start line. And I always feel like, okay, well, I've run from OCD and now I'm 26 miles away from it. And then OCD pops up and it's right there. It's like you didn't run from it at all. It's right there. It's right in your face. And it really takes you by surprise, even though you were nowhere near it. And thoughts that you may have had before, you were kind of like, those aren't a big deal. I have perspective. I have objectivity right now. If I got those thoughts, it probably wouldn't bother me. And then all of a sudden, Selwyn says I need a haircut too. I thought I like my hair. This is a problem. It's just a little long. I washed it. It's poofy. But Australia says I should get it. Dave says I should get it. Apparently I should get a haircut. So the reason I want to bring this up is because I personally find this very, very challenging. And I would consider myself in maintenance and management of OCD. I don't experience OCD. Your hair. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. If you ask a question, I'm going straight to you, Stephanie. Selwyn and Dave are on suspension of question. Use conditioner. I know it's dry. Okay. Stop. No more hair talk. So I really struggle. So management, maintenance. There's days, weeks, and months, as you always hear me say, where I don't feel like I have OCD at all, and I forget about it. And there's other times where it pops up. And in the last 3 weeks, I would say that my OCD has popped up pretty substantially. And there's a variety of reasons why. I've done very well. I'm proud of myself for giving myself lots and lots of compassion around that. I used to beat myself up with OCD would come around. You're weak. You're not doing anything right. You're not doing it right. Why is this happening? The answer is always because you have OCD, but why is this happening? But in the last couple of weeks, or 3 weeks, OCD is popped up a couple times really, really loudly for me. I tend to call them OCD attacks when everything's fine, and then it's like screaming at me, and I give in and I compulse. And it might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, it might be 2 hours, and then it's kind of over. And I bounce back really quickly, which is a good thing. But in the past 3 weeks, I've had a couple of incidents, and they really gave me pause, like, what's going on, and am I starting to relapse? And I'm having very, very productive days. And I met with my therapist, and she's like, that's just OCD, and that's just OCD. But I wanted to share them with you because ultimately, the reason I like to advocate and talk is to let you know that you're not alone. And just because I'm here telling you about my OCD doesn't mean that I don't have tough experiences. But I also want to talk about what you do with them when they pop up. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of things that happened recently. And by the way, things for me are really, really good right now, which is exactly why OCD is popping up, because things are good and I'm happy and things are happening. And that's exactly when OCD is like, oh, let me throw a wrench in that, because you can't be happy. We don't want that. But I quickly, before I want to go into examples, just want to read a couple more comments because these are great. Chitana wrote, this literally just happened to me 30 minutes ago. Eric said, I decided to make watching certain TV shows into a planned exposure and then journal about it. Valerie wrote, I oftentimes retreat and gather my thoughts in order to attack. Absolutely. Hey, Michelle, it's good to see you. Jessica wrote, Ethan, you're ruminating on your hair. Very good, Jess. Well played. Valerie wrote, it was an adult class when she said she was teaching Sunday school. I was fortunate that my fellow teachers had knowledge of what I was going through. I'll read Neil's comment real quick. When OCD attacks when I least expect it, he automatically gets myself, he says, 1, automatically get myself back into therapy, bolster all of my healthy coping skills, reach out to my support system, scream loudly into the void, eat a disgusting amount of Skinny Pop, like the Costco size bag that we agree on, start designing new passive exposures I can do on my own, lean into the thought and make it a gazillion times worse, eat ice cream, physically pat myself on the back, bolster my positive self-talk. This is great. If you guys want to look at Neil's comment at 7:12 p.m., wherever you were, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are, it's a great sort of approach that he has to when he faces OCD, or when OCD attacks, so to speak. So let me get back to my OCD attacks, if you will. I'm going to give you 2 examples. About 2 weeks ago, I was working. I was really busy. I work from home most of the time. And like I said, things are going really, really good. I got a bunch of great news, and just everything in my life is sort of working and gelling, which is terrifying, as you probably can relate to some extent. Went downstairs to eat lunch. And I had, speaking of Costco, Neil, I had the Kirkland deli meat package, which is really good. It's delicious. It's tasty. I love turkey. And I sat down and I had some cheese and some turkey meat and a few other things. And I opened the package and it stunk. It absolutely stunk. And I know that turkey typically can smell bad when you open the package. But it really smelled bad. It smelled really, really bad. And then I was like, well, if this is OCD, I don't want to let it win. So I'm pretty sure turkey oftentimes smells bad when you open it out of the package because of the sulfur and whatever chemicals that they use, even though it's no chemicals. So I was like, I'm gonna taste it. So I taste it, and it tastes okay, but it kind of tastes like the smell. So I keep testing, right? So I eat another piece of turkey to see if it's bad, and I eat another piece of turkey to see if it's bad, and then I take a bunch more turkey out, and I'm not sure, and I keep smelling, and I keep tasting, and now this has gone beyond like, I'm going to eat this turkey and enjoy it, and I don't care if it's bad. This is me trying to figure out if this turkey is bad or not. Smells terrible, tastes okay, although does it taste? I'm not sure, having just so much doubt and uncertainty. And my anxiety started going way up, which doesn't usually happen for me anymore. It takes a lot, but my anxiety started really spiking. And I have a funny story to tell you, Eric, about food safety. Is one of my anxieties too. He wrote, OCD tells me I could never forgive myself making myself or someone else. Oh, I don't care if anybody else gets sick, just me. But I have a funny story to tell you about that in a minute. So, so I ended up eating probably 75% of this turkey meat. And the only reason I stopped was I got down and it started getting hard. The reason it was hard is because it was frozen at the bottom. I guess it had been in a cold part of my fridge, but in my mind it was hard, which meant it was stale, which meant it had been opened or whatever it was. So now I'm Googling Costco smell turkey, Costco turkey smell. Does turkey smell bad when open? I mean, the Google void, the Google spiral. Thank you, Melina. Exactly. So Googling, so I know so I put it back in the fridge and I go back upstairs and I'm like, my son's, my anxiety is probably at a 6 or 7, maybe a little higher, which is really, really high for me at this point. And I feel like I'm starting to come down, but I'm still having really intense thoughts. What if it's bad? What if it's sick? I go back down and I eat some more. And then I'm like, I can't eat any more of this stupid. I throw it away. Then I go back upstairs and I go back down and take it out of the garbage and start smelling it to make sure that it's, because now it's away from the package. Does it smell like turkey? Does it not smell like turkey? And I don't dig through the garbage. That's not something I enjoy doing. I don't necessarily have contamination, but if my hands, I'm digging in the garbage, I'll typically wash my hands. But when you're in it, you just don't care. So, so I smelled it. I wasn't smelling it. I was smelling it. I wasn't going to taste it again because it was in the garbage, and I probably went down 2 or 3 times. So finally, I took the garbage out. And I came upstairs and I went back to work. And I guess over the next 2 or 3 hours, everything started to come down and I started to habituate. And by that night, I guess I didn't care as much. But I was really bothered by the fact that I had done this. It was some of the most compulsing I've done in a fair amount of time. And for a substantial amount of time. It took up, typically if I compulse now, it'll be 1 or 2 seconds or 30 seconds, then I'll just, move past it or hurt myself. And if you have comments or thoughts on this, please, I like to make this a two-sided conversation. So I was really bothered by this. I didn't know why all of a sudden. Turkey actually is my safe food, used to be my safe food for health anxiety. I just always felt safe with lunch meats. And then after that, I was very hesitant to eat any lunch meat. Open it up. Does it smell? Talk to my therapist. She's like, Ethan, just start eating lunch meats and stop smelling. And I did. I eventually, did that. And I think there's thoughts in the back of my head if I eat this stuff or open. But what happens when OCD shows up when you least expect it? This was the perfect example of that. It showed up hard. It showed up fast. And I just got pushed. I just jumped on the roller coaster and just went on the ride for 2 solid hours. And like I said, I was not thrilled about that, but I chalked it up. The other example I want to share with you, well, please, if you have questions, I'm going to get up to your questions in a minute. So don't worry. I know we have a backdoor spike question. There's a couple other questions. So hopefully you're hanging with, but if you have any thoughts on this or anything I'm talking about, please let me know. So the other thing, and I'll make this quick because I definitely want to get back. And there's a trigger warning here. If you have bodily fluids, it's I don't know if it's gross or not, but now I've teed it up and made it way worse. But it's pee. We'll talk about pee. I think that's fair to talk about. If you have a fear of pee, or pee bothers you, just comment and I can skip the story. Perhaps the turkey story was enough. But needless to say, the following week, my girlfriend went to run a 50K. That's right, a 50K. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but she loves it. So we went to run a 50K, and it was her first ultra marathon race. And we went to middle of nowhere, South Carolina. We were staying in a house, and I was so stressed. It was a terrible time to go out of town. I had so much work. And it was just, I was very, very stressed. But I was excited to be there for our first race, and I wouldn't have missed it. So the first night at the house, I got up at 4 a.m. and I went to go to the bathroom, and I peed, and I looked down, and the color looked darker than it should have been in my mind. So I turned on the light and I looked, and it looked really, really dark. Hopefully, and let me know if this is like too gross, but I don't think it's too gross. It doesn't get any grosser than this, I promise. And I started eyeing it and inspect, because one of my other fears is like, what if I pee blood? Right? So did it have a pink tint? Did it not have a pink tint? It was amber. It was almost dark brown. I'd never seen my color like this before. Do I take a picture of it? Do I not take a picture of it? And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, no, don't reassure me. So then I'm like, oh my gosh, Katie has this big race, and like, I can't ruin her weekend with this, so I just need to flush the toilet and move on. I'm sure it's OCD. So I flushed the toilet, left the bedroom, and then was like, wait a minute, what if I convinced myself that it was OCD so I could go forward with the weekend, but it was really something that I should have paid attention to, and it really was dangerous. And long story short, man, I haven't had a health anxiety sort of obsession / compulsion in a while. And this one stuck with me. This one, I was really nervous, and I was really upset that something was significantly wrong. The one compulsion that I didn't do was drink a ton of water to see if I could flush it out. I just drank more water because I thought I might be dehydrated, but that nagging fear back there that's like, nope, it's dehydration. It's not dehydration. There's blood. There's something serious wrong with your kidneys and your liver, and you know, you're gonna end up in an ER any minute. And the next day, man, I was Googling and I was Googling and I was Googling, and there were pee color charts I was looking at. And I mean, you name it, I was trying to get an answer for this thing. And P.S., no pun intended, P.S., I had gone to the bathroom multiple times since then, and it was perfectly fine. Looked totally normal. But I was really, really, really concerned. And I was even more concerned because this was the second OCD attack in a couple weeks, and out of character for me, and it really bothered me. I was still asking for reassurance that night when Katie said to me, and I think it's one of the benefits of being in a relationship where you've both been heavily therapized. She's like, I'm saying this because I love you, but you really should, if you care about me and you love me, don't steal this moment from me because of your OCD, right? Don't keep obsessing and giving in and compulsing over like what's value driven, which is my race and us being together and all that stuff. And until there's a real problem, then we should just be in the moment as best we can. And it really struck me. It was great. It was the perfect thing to say to me, because it put a value in front of me that was very specific, and that I wasn't willing to sacrifice. And I stopped Googling, and of course the thoughts were still there, but I cut out all the compulsions. I cut out the rumination as best I could. And the next morning, there was also a lot to do to prepare for the race, and I had to be building tents and a lot of manual stuff, which is not my thing. But I did okay. But the bottom line is, because I had a lot of stuff to do, and it was outside, and it was raining, and it was 45 degrees out, I was able to get into something, and because of that, it actually subsided very, very quickly, to the point where sort of middle of the day, I was just enjoying the rain and being outside and being in a tent and kind of doing something new that I'd never done before. And I would say it was from 100 down to 10%. And by the next day, I'd pretty much forgotten about it. Although I think I probably eyed when I went to the bathroom, a few times after that. So why do I bring all of this up? I don't usually talk in great detail about obsessions, compulsions, symptoms, things like that. I don't want to spend too much time on it, and I don't know that I've had something that's made me compulse that much in at least the last year. But it was important to bring up because that's part of OCD, and whether you experience it all the time or it occurs occasionally, it brings up a lot of stuff for us, right? Why is this happening? What did I do differently? Why is my brain broken? Who likes reminders also that they have OCD? Oh, I'm mentally ill. All right, all the self-stigmatizing thought comes in. So what happens when OCD shows up when you least expect it? Well, a lot of things. It's really easy to get thrown in a direction and really just buy in to OCD, especially if you haven't heard OCD in a little while. The great thing, this is a weird analogy, but like, people who sit in traffic all the time doesn't bother them because they're in traffic all the time. If you don't ever sit in traffic and you go to LA and you go driving in LA, the traffic will drive you nuts because you're not used to it. And I think the great thing about treatment and therapy is that you get to a place where you're managing your OCD. You might have these long periods of time where OCD really isn't bothering you that much. The downside of that is when it hits, you're not in practice. It catches you off guard, and you may not be as good as other folks at managing that in the moment, right then and there. And I know that's my case. I know that something I talk about with my therapist is Ethan, we know most of the time I can manage really, really well, but when it gets really loud, do I cave right away? Do I compulse right away? Do I give in? And it takes me a minute to sort of ground my feet and get my bearings. And I want to get to a lot of your comments because these are awesome, and keep asking questions, but I want to get to some tools. So what do you do? What do you do when you're caught off guard when OCD happens when you least expect it? So the first thing that happens to me and so many people is that I like to, again, it pushes you back on the roller coaster. So how do you not get on that roller coaster? How do you not get on the ride, right? The ride that OCD wants to take you on. So the first thing you want to do is, as scary as it is, and keep in mind, if it's something familiar, then it's really easy to say, oh, I worry about that. I worry about that all the time. For me, food is familiar. Food anxiety is familiar. So, but the pee thing, that never happened before. So that had to be real, right? That made a stronger argument for this isn't OCD. And the thought of saying it was OCD and possibly ignoring the truth because of really, really scary. I don't know that I'd had that thought before, that I had convinced myself that it was OCD in an effort to ignore it. And so I think number one is we can go back to Neil's list. I think Neil's list was awesome, but number one, have a good support system. Number two, lean into your skills and tools, whatever they are. Exposure response prevention, acceptance commitment therapy, meditation. One of the biggest things that helped me with that spike on the trip was I actually, when Katie was running, there was nothing for me to do. It was my first time sitting for 30 miles. So I did pretty well though. And it was pouring rain. I just sat there and watched the rain and listened and kind of took the time to meditate in nature. And I mean, it made such a big difference. It wasn't about avoiding the thoughts. It was really taking the time to sit with the thoughts. The other thing to point out is also, if I'm using my experience as an example, is that if I can look at this and say, wow, I compulse more than I compulsed in a long time. And I was really struggling with obsessions and thoughts. But if I also look at this from an objective point of view, I didn't change what I did. I still did things during the day. That day that I was really struggling, I went to the grocery store, we went shopping, we made food, we went for a walk. I was miserable, but I did those things. And I even had fun at some level. There was some part of me that was still enjoying that, even though my mind was just spinning. And I think that's really important to acknowledge, because it's so easy to acknowledge the crap, but I think it's important to acknowledge, but I continue to live into my values. Yes, I was compulsing, and that's bad, and you shouldn't do that. But I can grant myself compassion, and you should regardless. But grant yourself compassion because I was continuing to live into my values, continuing to participate in opposite action, trying to continue to come back to the moment. And that's another thing. It's like we beat ourselves up when we wander off. And it's like, well, I wandered off 1,000 times. It's like, well, that's okay. That's okay. The question is, did you try to come back 1,000 times? And if you did, that's a win, right? and come back to the present 1,000 times, even if you keep getting taken away, as long as you make the effort to keep coming back, that's you fighting. That's a good thing. So we have to get an objective point of view. We have to get perspective. We have to get insight into what's happening. We have to recognize the OCD thoughts for what they are, that OCD voice. We have to be willing to be okay not being okay. We have to be willing to be afraid. We have to be willing to let that thing that we fear happen and face it then, as opposed to preemptively do something. Trust me, part of me wanted to go to the ER and get blood work and have them check my pee and all that stuff. But, you know, until I had more information, until I had more facts, I wasn't going to do it, even though I wanted to. And it was the first, but then, you know, there's a stigma. I know I'm rambling, but there's a stigma of wanting to, and like, oh my God, I haven't wanted to do that in so long. Anyway, so your skills, your tools, and above all, self-compassion. Why is this happening? Why am I weak all of a sudden? Did I make a mistake? Am I not handling this well? No, it's because you have OCD, and OCD does its thing. OCD does its thing. It does what it wants. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's loud. We know that stress activates it. So I was stressed. I was out of my comfort zone. I was doing something brand new that I was excited about, but I was still a little nervous about it. And it got real loud. And that's okay. It is hard to have self-compassion. I'll get to that. That's a great question. And that's okay. And I think this time, out of all the previous times, I probably did the best I've been able to do with self-compassion. And what's super cool is on Monday, I traveled for the first time during COVID to shoot a commercial up north. And after all of this, I was really nervous. I probably was less nervous about COVID and more nervous about, oh my God, what's my OCD going to do? What's my anxiety going to do? How am I going to cope with it? How am I going to deal with it? But I quickly reframed this idea of what an awesome opportunity to challenge my OCD and anxiety. What a great opportunity to do this. This is something I want to do. This is something I love to do. This is something I need to do. And on top of that, be mindful that it's not just OCD. Like, no, people are uncomfortable being around other people right now. That is valid. That's not an OCD thing. We're currently trying to come out of a pandemic thing. And so being in the airport, being on the escalator, sitting on the plane, you know, very close to people who are taking off their masks to eat and drink, it was anxiety provoking. Being in a hotel, I noticed myself maneuvering through the airport, and I was slow. I was slower than usual because I was questioning everything I was touching and doing, but I gave myself permission to do that because I've been out of practice for 18 months or however long it's been. But the reason I tell you that part of it is because it's what you do moving forward that counts. So I can grant myself compassion for the experiences that I had with Turkey and with the pee thing. But then I can look at the week after and say, you know what? I did this really hard thing. And it was toward my values, and it was wonderful, and I had a great time. And I came back, and, you know, I'm still alive. And could I have COVID? Maybe. I hope not. I doubt it. It's unlikely, but who knows? And the guy was coughing next to me on the plane like the whole time, and he kept taking his mask off to cough, which I wanted to be like, dude, that defeats the purpose. Stop that shit. Sorry, I rarely cuss during this, but anyway. So that's me in the last 3 weeks. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to share with y'all some of the bad times, because I always talk about that. I always say, listen, just because we're advocates, just because, you know, we're on live stream, it doesn't mean that we're not going through it with you, whatever that is. And so anytime I have an opportunity to share with you something that, ew, what was ew? The P comment? I don't know. I don't remember what I said. But anything now I'm going to worry about ew. Anytime I have an opportunity to share with you some hard times, I'm really excited about it, because I think it's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to experience. It's an opportunity to share in our common struggle, but also see that we're not defined by our OCD. You know, it's a disease, not a decision. We are not our OCD, but it's really in what we do moving forward. It's really, hey, Michael Schramm, it's really what we do moving forward that counts. Can't go back. Oh, to cough. Yeah, it was gross. Thank you. See, I took it personally. Apparently, I'm still spiked. So with that, thank you for letting me share a little bit about the last 2 or 3 weeks. We had Tom Smalley on last week, who had his first Anxiety and Athletes live stream yesterday. And so it wasn't a good time for me to talk about that during that Just Ethan. So I was excited to share with all of you tonight. So if this has sparked anything about your experiences, I'm going to jump back up to the comments and start answering some questions. So let's see here. I remember there was a backdoor spike question. I just have to get to it. Give me 1 second and I will find it. Here we are. Okay, so Juan Rivas at 7:02 p.m. asked, can you talk about the backdoor spike? So the backdoor spike is essentially, originally you have intrusive thoughts, let's say, and those intrusive thoughts start to give you a lot of anxiety, and so much so that they really upset you. But then as you either go through therapy or for whatever other reasons, that anxiety starts to lessen, and the anxiety gets less and less and less. But you continue to have the thoughts. And then you wonder, you're having less anxiety, but you're still having those horrible, terrible thoughts. And you start to obsess that you're not anxious enough because of these thoughts, because I'm thinking about stabbing my mother over and over again. And before, when I thought that I didn't want to do it, and oh my God, and my anxiety was at a 10. No, I don't care. Maybe it's at a 2. And I keep having that thought. And oh my God, what if I'm desensitized? What if I want to and I don't care because I'm not feeling that anxiety? I'm not feeling that. Because I'm not feeling that anxiety, maybe that means that I want to, or maybe that means that it's real. So you start to obsess about the lack of anxiety when an intrusive thought comes up. That's called the backdoor spike. And you treat it just like anything else. Being willing to live with the uncertainty that it may or may not happen, accepting the diagnosis of OCD, letting yourself, because that's a thought too. It's all thoughts. That's what's interesting. Oh, I can never get well. That's a thought. Well, what if it's that's a thought? It's all thoughts, right? Thoughts aren't facts. Thoughts aren't actions. Thoughts are thoughts, or thoughts are thoughts, or thoughts. I'm a banana. That's a thought. Doesn't make me a banana, but I'm a banana. So the thought of, oh my gosh, what if it means it's more real because I'm not experiencing, I should be experiencing more anxiety. That's a thought. So we have to say to ourselves, well, I have OCD. I've been engaged in exposure response prevention. My anxiety around it's gone down. So it's most likely still OCD, and I'm still willing to live with the uncertainty that it might not be, because I don't want to go back to where I was. Juan, I hope that answered your question. Please feel free to ask more questions. I'm going to quickly scroll back down here because you got that in early. Let me scroll back down. So now it's definitely the time to, let's see, we had some comments about my hair. I appreciate that. Deirdre wrote, this week has been different, trying to focus the struggle with OCD, but I fight to do what I need to do, focus on my new part-time job. Absolutely. It's hard. It's hard to navigate with OCD, but I think when we have an opportunity to engage in something value-driven, it gives us an opportunity to fight it in a really healthy way, because we have a value staring us in the face. And yeah, thank you, Jess. Appreciate it. And I think, the desire is to go to the job and not have OCD. It's to not have the experience. Like, well, I want to enjoy my job. I want to work. I want to earn money, and I don't want to have OCD. I don't want to experience the struggle, and I want to feel good while I'm doing it. And that's okay. That's valid. But, with OCD, the best thing we can do is not make it about the feelings, being willing to feel icky and do the part-time job. Many of you have heard me tell my stories when I was working at a Guitar Center when I was in Boston, and I went day after day crying in the bathroom over and over again, just terrified. And it wasn't the way I particularly wanted to go to work, but because I kept going to work and being willing to work, even though I felt like crap, I eventually started to enjoy work and started to feel better and didn't reinforce the things that we don't want to reinforce. Summer wrote, I can relate so much to the food paranoia. It's hard for me to judge what's reasonable and what's OCD. I had to stop cooking because of this, but let me say I used to work for a grocery store. We were the studio that photographed all their ads. We absolutely opened up new raw meats and lunch meats that were rotten, even though they were in date. That's absolutely true. And I thought about that. And the reality of it is that there's always going to be a situation. Well, first of all, two things in this. we have to at a certain point, especially if we're addressing OCD, just stop caring whether it is or isn't OCD. Clearly I cared at that point, but in general, especially if you're in treatment, I just when I was in treatment, I just assumed it was always OCD, because it probably was. And it eliminated that constant, is it, isn't, I don't know, I'm not sure. And when you have more insight and in sort of in your maintenance management phase, for the most part, you can tease out pretty simply. OCD is a very distinct voice, very familiar words. You can be like, that's OCD, screw you. And sometimes you just know. You just know. I've been to the hospital a couple times in the last 10 years. You know why? Because I knew. It was like, I need to go to the hospital. My ankle is broken. I need to go. I hurt my knee and I literally can't walk. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know, should I? I had an infection in an area you don't want to have an infection in. It wasn't, I don't know, and should I? It was like, no, I'm really sick. I need to go. You just know. Right? It's that I'm not sure and maybe and what. So I think kind of just a general rule of thumb is if it walks like and it talks like and it looks like and it smells like, it is. And you know what? If it isn't, then what's the harm? And so to your second point, I've probably eaten lots of raw and rancid things. I don't know that I've been sick from it, but I would rather just not go back to where I was. Having food poisoning, as much as it terrifies me, because it triggers PTSD for me and flashbacks, and not just the illness itself, but quite frankly, if I were on the fence, I would probably eat it just because I don't want to give OCD power. And I ate at that time. I just then went through a spiral. Unless I was like, this is bad. This is rancid. This isn't good. I'm not going to eat it. I'm not saying I wouldn't, if the meat's green or if there's, it's disgusting or something. I knew deep down that this turkey meat wasn't bad. I'd open up package after package after package of turkey meat, and it always smells terrible. And I've always said to whoever's around me, oh man, turkey smells like crap when you open it out of the package like that. I knew that. Whatever was going on, my OCD went nuts. But the reality is OCD is warning you from a potential fear that may or may not come true. And for some things, those are rooted in reality. What if I get sick? What if I get hit COVID? What if I get hit by a car? What if I hit something with my car? What if? Is there a possibility that any of those things could happen? Sure. But I know for a fact that overly protecting myself from those things took away my life. And so, yeah, I'm willing to take a chance, not just with food, but, with my fear of what if I hit my head, or what if I did this, or what if I accidentally harm myself, or I stopped taking my pills because what if I overdose? I'm just going to keep living life to the best I can, accept that it's OCD, trust that it's OCD, trust the people in my life that have diagnosed me with this and helped me with this, and move forward. Because my other options led me to psychiatric hospitals and just horrible places that I don't ever want to go back again. So, you know what, if I ate something and I wasn't sure and I ate it anyway, and it ended up being bad, I don't know that I would, I'd be angry, but I don't know that I would change my decision. And again, I'm not saying that if it was obviously bad, I wouldn't eat it anyway. But I'm saying if I were not sure, for instance, that turkey had been bad and I ate it and I got real sick, sometimes it's just coincidence. I wrote an article a while back, a blog article called What If OCD Was Right? And it discussed this idea of like, well, I was afraid something was going to happen. And look, it did. OCD was protecting me. It's like, no, life just happens sometimes, but we definitely don't want to give in to our OCD. So thank you for that comment. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jess, for putting it up. I think it's not Matthias, it's Matthias from Brazil. How do you cope when OCD peaks up during an activity that demands mental focus, when reading a paper, writing a paper, etc.? Actually, I think I skipped a question. I remember seeing somebody about generic OCD, which I'm not sure what you meant, but if you ask that, drop it down in the comments below and I'll get to that. So that's a great question. I think we have to look at what we are capable of doing. First of all, have you had treatment? Have you had therapy? Have you had exposure response prevention? If you have had treatment and therapy, your skills and tools are, you have skills and tools to lean on to help you manage reading a paper, writing a report, doing work, doing something that's requires a lot of mental focus. And you can utilize those skills and tools. If you don't, it's a lot harder. And you know what? It's harder with the skills and tools as well. So then the question becomes, well, what do I do? You do the best you can. You do the best you can. If you can't give 100%, if that's just not happening and you're giving 50, then you just have to accept giving 50 and do what you can to ground yourself. Sometimes I take breaks. Sometimes I meditate. Sometimes I go for a walk. Changing your environment really, really helps, especially if you're at your desk or in your office. If you can go outside and walk for 10 minutes or go get a drink or just kind of change your environment. Jess talked about the 5 senses earlier. The 5 senses is a great meditation and grounding exercise. You basically go out wherever you are, you take a moment and first you identify colors that are around you. So it's see, right? What do I see? I see pink, I see red, I see blue, I see green. And then what do you hear? Oh, I hear the air conditioning, I hear birds, I hear the cat, I hear trucks or cars driving by. What do things feel like around me? Oh, this is cold, this is hard. What do things smell like? Well, it smells like amazing because it's me and I'm wearing cologne. No, I'm kidding. And what, taste. Don't go around licking wherever you're sitting unless it's good for your exposure. But and that does a really good job of grounding you in the here and now in the present. Mindfulness is really good in doing that. But at the end of the day, we come back down to self-compassion, right? We have to be compassionate with ourselves that maybe we can't give 100% of our mental aptitude to whatever we're doing. So we're going to give what we can. We're going to keep trying to come back to the moment, and we're going to be okay with that. We're going to be accepting of that. And even if you write in 30-second bursts or 1-minute bursts, and that's all you have, and you get distracted and you come back and keep writing, maybe it is going to take you longer. What we don't want to do is negotiate with it, right? So, if you're trying to manage your job and not actively treat or work on OCD, then yeah, it's going to be very challenging to keep that. But if you can, if you can get with a clinician or a therapist, if you can read some books or do some tapes or whatever it is, and really actively try to fight OCD, situations like that will become easier and easier, and you'll get better at it. So I hope that helped answer that. Michelle, hi Michelle Carroll. Earlier this week, my daughter had a car accident. I'm so sorry to hear that. I wasn't with her, but totally started taking responsibility for it because I considered calling her about 5 minutes before the accident, but didn't. I was thinking if I had called, she would have taken the call, which would have led her on the road and helped her to avoid the accident. I saw that as OCD. Yeah, I mean, you're taking responsibility for something that you had no responsibility for. You weren't driving the car. You weren't the other driver. I don't know what happened, and I hope your daughter's okay. But that's what we do, right? What if I'd done this? What if I'd done that? And we don't have that kind of power. We only have control of our own focus and behavior and nothing else. And on the other side of that, let me reframe this for you. Again, I hope she's okay. But what if you did call and she got into a worse accident? What if, how many times has something really good happened and you're like, whoa, if I hadn't hit that light and that train hadn't gone by, and then I got stopped by that cop, I would have never, and insert whatever cool thing happened. OCD, you can always, right? And maybe you're kind of laughing at yourself if you'd call and she gotten into a worse accident because then you delayed her and something worse happened. That's the thing. OCD will attack whatever it can. So, yeah, it's, if you're blaming yourself for the accident because you making a phone call might have stopped it, it might have, it might not have, it might have made it worse. We don't know, but thank you for sharing, Michelle. Appreciate it. Shitana wrote, yeah, when it comes up for me, I panic that I am going to get worse or be where I was or that the meds aren't working and it almost feels like PTSD. Absolutely. I know you had a question about, oh, right there, self-compassion. So OJ at 7:27 p.m. wrote, how do you get out of the in denial loop when you are experiencing OCD symptoms? It's a great question. I think this comes down to, again, treatment and therapy and education. Nobody wants a mental illness. It's not fun. I always talk about I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't be where I am now, and I wouldn't have this community and so many amazing friends and insight into life. I think the denial is part of lack of understanding of OCD, what it is, that it's not your fault, and processing it in a healthy way. I mean, I think anybody goes through it with a diagnosis, a cancer, or otherwise. We don't want to believe that we have it. But if you're experiencing OCD symptoms and you're in, sort of denial about it, processing it and understanding why it's happening and the reason, and that it's not you. Like I said, I always say those two things. It's a disease, not a decision. You are not your OCD. And really understanding why it's happening and what you can do about it. OCD is one of the most treatable mental illnesses. Doesn't mean that it's easy to treat. I always shudder when I say that, because I know somebody's out there going, "Oh my God, it's very treatable and it hasn't worked for me and I'm the worst." And because that's what I would have thought if I heard somebody else said that. So, but that's a great question. The in denial loop, is oh, I misread your question, didn't I? When you aren't experiencing OCD symptoms, how do you get out of the in denial loop when you aren't experiencing OCD symptoms? I'm sorry. Reading is new for me. Well, do you mean in denial that you don't have OCD? Which totally relates back to my what to expect. I don't know that, I'm not a big label person. If you're not experiencing OCD, either because you're not triggered or you've had treatment at that time, I think we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to live our best lives. We're trying to get through this life in a meaningful way and in a full way, in a value-driven way. I think the diagnosis is important up top for treatment reasons and other things. But after that, it's like, just be, but I totally understand and relate to a certain extent what you're talking about, because when an OCD pops up, I get really angry. I get really angry at it. And I don't know that I have an answer for you. I have to think about that, OJ. In fact, I encourage you to email me, because I might ask myself if I'm in denial. I don't know that I'm in denial when I'm not experiencing OCD symptoms. It's a good question. I don't know that I am. I just think that I don't think about it, and then I'm reminded that I have it, and it's like, oh yeah, I have it, and you've definitely given me pause for thought. So let's get back to that, OJ. I'm sorry I read your question incorrectly. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not apologizing anymore. Read all the questions incorrectly. Shitana, oh my, sorry. The comments adjust, and then I lose my place. Where was your comment? I love this question. 7:32 p.m. Shiatana, why is it so hard to have self-compassion? Great question. I don't know. I just know my own experience with self-compassion, and I always describe it as learning Japanese backwards. It is not a language that I speak naturally. And this is not, I don't know this. There's no research. I haven't read any research. I'm genuinely curious whether individuals with OCD struggle more with self-compassion than others, or those with mental illness, body BDD or anxiety or any stuff with self-worth or ED. Self-compassion is hard. We're our own worst critics. That inner sales voice in there that's constantly berating us and telling us what pieces of crap we are, and we're broken and we shouldn't have done that, and that was wrong, and look what you're doing. And I always say, if that voice were a friend, you wouldn't be friends with them anymore. You'd be like, see, I don't want you in my life. Oh my God, that you're terrible. But like, somehow I call it a salesman because it resells me on it every day. I finally like get some objectivity, and I can see it and be like, you're lying. I'm not buying into that. Sorry, you're wrong. And the next day it screams all its stuff. And I'm like, you're right. I'm a terrible person. I don't deserve compassion. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve to get better. I don't deserve treatment. I don't deserve, I don't know why self-compassion is so hard, but I do know that it doesn't matter that it's hard. I think that you can work hard to learn how to be compassionate with yourself. And there's some really good ways to do that. There's some really good workbooks. I worked through a workbook very systematically and slowly with my therapist. You don't have to do it with your therapist. I wanted to do it with my therapist. If you want to email me, I can give you some suggestions of some really good self-compassion workbooks. In fact, it's not out yet, but Kim Quinlan is writing an amazing book on self-compassion, which I'm reading now. So self-compassion is hard. I don't know if we're wired to just be hard on ourselves, or I know a lot of people that are like, yeah, whatever, man, it's all good. And I'm like, I'm not like that. So good question, but I think that it's okay to have to work hard at it. And I think it's something that I'm going to have to work at my whole life. I don't think that I'm ever going to master self-compassion or be the guru of self-compassion. I think that, I won the last few weeks self-compassion better than I had before. And if I can continuously kind of one up myself, then I'm winning. And I know I'll probably not self-compassionate lots of other times too. That's part of the process. I think that's a great question. I have no idea why it's so hard. It just is. But it is worth diving into. It really was game-changing for me. I didn't realize how nasty I was to myself over the course of 10 years after I got better from OCD. And introducing self-compassion was a big game changer for me. So thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. How do you become an advocate? What a great question. That's at 7:36, Jess. So before I answer that, I encourage somebody to re-ask a question because I thought I missed it. Just want to make sure I didn't. Okay. So this is always a good question to end on because we're just about running out of time. So how you become an advocate. The first thing is, Jess, we can put up the advocate page or put in a link if that's easier. For the IOCDF website, we actually have a path to advocacy, the IOCDF, where we can sign up and we give you all kinds of opportunities to advocate. I say that cautiously because you do not need, you can be an advocate in a variety of ways. It doesn't have to look like, there you go. And you can get involved with the IOCDF, but being an advocate can look like a variety of things. Individuals that are commenting on this thread are advocating. And the way I boil it down in its simplest form is sharing your story with one other person is advocacy. You're touching their life, they're touching yours, and you're sharing something that's meaningful to them and that's meaningful to you, and they're walking away with it. From there, I mean, what's beautiful about social media is so many people have become advocates. So many people can become advocates on their own terms. The first thing I tell you is, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? If you want to become an OCD advocate, what are you passionate about? Is there a subtype? Is there a symptom? Is there some experience that you had that you don't want other people to go through? Identify the passion first. From there, what are you comfortable with? Now, we don't want to put too much into comfortability. I don't think sharing your story is always comfortable. But for instance, I know lots of people who have amazing Instagram accounts that are anonymous. We don't know who they are, but they put out great stuff. You don't have to share your story on a national level or even a regional level. Choosing to share your story publicly is a very personal choice. And, I would start with maybe a family member that doesn't know, or a close friend that maybe doesn't know, and just see how it feels to share your story. One thing I can tell you is, once you share your story in a public way, it's out there, it's there. You can't take that back. And so, you do want to be cautious to a certain extent and make sure that you're in a good place to be able to advocate. Doesn't mean you need to be well to advocate, meaning you can still struggle with OCD and advocate. So many great advocates on here that are, but I think that there's amazing. I mean, there's an advocate, an IOCDF advocate that when he was a junior in high school wrote a book, got it published because he wanted it out there. Tons of people with killer Instagram accounts that are advocating through blogs or memes or articles or just posts and Insta stories and things like that. You can do a podcast, you can do a live stream, you can do YouTube videos. There's really a ton of ways to advocate in meaningful ways. And like I said, you can also go to the advocate program, even just joining chats. If you can go to Health Unlocked, which is our live chat community, and start just chatting with individuals or joining Facebook groups where you can give others support or a feeling of belongingness, right? Advocate is a very specific term, but it's a very large term, and it can encompass a variety of things. One of my most favorite things to do as an advocate is to speak to groups inpatient. Maybe it's 5 or 6 people, and we just sit and talk for an hour. And I love that. I love connecting on a very personal level like that. That stuff is really important to me. and connecting with all of you, which is why I like answering emails. I'm behind. I'm sorry. I'm very behind on my Just Ethan emails. So I will answer them if you're on there and like, why haven't you emailed me? So, if you're willing to share, if you're willing to support, and again, you don't have to be public. For instance, you can, if you want, you can print out information sheets and email them to schools. Nobody has to know your story. You can pass on just good information out into the world, because there's enough crappy information out there that's not helping stigma and treatment, right? So just by being willing to reduce stigma and educate in an effort to help individuals with OCD find accessible, affordable, and effective treatment, you're an advocate. With that, it is just after 8 o'clock. So if I didn't get a chance to answer your question, I'll give you an email address at the end of this. Actually, go ahead and email me. I don't know why we're skipping it. Just go ahead and email. Thank you, Jess. Feel free to email me at justethan@iocdf.org. And that goes for anything. If you agreed with what I said, if you disagreed, if you have topic suggestions for upcoming Just Ethans, which will be back on schedule. So every other Tuesday. So not next week, but the following week on Tuesday, we will be back at a regular time slot. Yes, check out the IOCDF Peace of Mind for all upcoming programming. Thank you, Jess. So that email goes directly to me. So please feel free to email as long as we're on emails. I do have some housekeeping, so stick around. I have some stuff to announce. But as long as we're on emails, you can always email the IOCDF at info@iocdf.org. We'll put that up as well. Okay, some quick housekeeping. This is going to be hard to do the outro because I did everything out of order, but that's okay. We're just going to go with the flow. We're not going to be rigid. We're going to be flexible here. So some quick things. First of all, we have a really busy week next week. So if you need support, we got lots of virtual stuff happening. On Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're having a diversity roundtable, diversity dialogue. The topic is representation in the OCD community. It's going to be moderated by Darlene Davis. We have an amazing panel for you, including some board members and some lived experience and some doctors and professionals. So that is Tuesday, the 18th at 6 p.m. Eastern, Diversity Roundtable. On Wednesday, the 19th at 12 p.m. Eastern is Chris's Corner. The topic is working. Oh, thank you. There you go. Is Chris's Corner. If I know Jess, she just made that. She's awesome. Okay. Or she's upset that I just called her out. Either way, that was awesome. Okay. Wednesday, 5/19 at 12 p.m. Eastern is Chris's Corner. It's working with young adults. Chris Tronson is a new live stream every other Wednesday. Yep, at noon. He's awesome. We love Chris, and he's an amazing advocate. Also has some amazing guests. And then Thursday at 7 p.m., I have my regular town hall. It's a family guide to getting over OCD with the brilliant John Abramowitz, Dr. John Abramowitz, along with Shev Mostafi and Deb Rosenberg. So next week, we have 3 live streams happening. It's a very, very busy week. So please tune in. Lots of good content. Also, and yes, again, you can check out iocdf.org/peace of mind for all upcoming programming. Valerie will kill me if I don't talk about this. And the only thing I fear more than OCD is Valerie. The Faith and Mental Health Conference is Friday, May 21st from 1 to 5 p.m. This is going to be amazing. It's diverse group of faith leaders and therapists and those with lived experience. There'll be both joint panels as well as individual discussions in group. And did I mention it is free? It's free. So if you're interested in faith and mental health, which is a topic that desperately needs to be discussed, no excuse if you're available. Friday, May 21st, 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Did I mention it's free? It's free. All right. We are just about out of time. I got my hearts from Valerie, so I know I'm safe for another week. Thank you, Valerie. And you will see Valerie as well. What kind of faith and religion? All kinds. It's covering a diverse range of faith and religion: Judaism, Christianity, Muslim, Sikh. Why am I blanking? Hindu. I think I'm honestly not sure who's represented on there. Maybe Valerie. If you want to email me, I can get back to you. But it's specifically diversity, a diverse faith background, not just one specific religion, and the intersection of faith and mental health. Valerie, I hope I may be on her bad list again. I hopefully did an okay job of answering that question. All right, with that, If you haven't been and you want to be notified about all programming the IOCDF has having over the next month, in addition to going to the website, you can subscribe and follow on Facebook and YouTube, and we're also on Twitch. And with that, that's everything. So thank you for spending your Tuesday night with me. Oh, Thursday night. Thank you for spending your Thursday night. Again, you can email me at justethan@iocdf.org. So until next time, which is 2 weeks from last Tuesday, stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels, don't let OCD off the hook. And we'll see you actually next week for the town hall on Thursday night. So thanks. Have a great night.